The bedroom door swung open with a soft click, and Natasha Smithfield stood frozen in the doorway, her heart already knowing what her eyes were about to confirm. There he was, her husband of 4 years, Julian Monroe, tangled in their $1,000 Egyptian cotton sheets with a woman Natasha had never seen before. A redhead this time. Monday had been a blonde, Wednesday was a brunette, and now, Friday night, a redhead. Third woman this week. Julian didn't even have the decency to look startled. He simply turned his head, met Natasha's eyes, and smirked. "You're home early," he said, as casually as if she'd caught him watching television instead of destroying their marriage vows. Again. The redhead at least had the grace to look embarrassed, scrambling to cover herself with the sheet. But Julian? Julian stretched like a satisfied cat, completely unbothered by his wife's presence. Once upon a time, Natasha would have cried, would have screamed, thrown things, begged him to explain why she wasn't enough. She'd played that role so many times she could have won an Oscar for it. But tonight, standing in that doorway with her grocery bag still in her hands, she'd bought his favorite steak for dinner like a fool. Something inside her simply stopped. No tears came, no rage, just a cold, clear certainty that settled in her bones like ice. She was done. "Get out," Natasha said quietly, looking at the redhead. "Take your clothes and go." "Now wait just a minute," Julian started, but Natasha's gaze cut to him like a knife. "I wasn't talking to you." The redhead didn't need to be told twice. She grabbed her scattered clothing and practically ran from the room, leaving a trail of shame and cheap perfume in her wake. Julian sat up in bed, still completely naked, still completely unashamed. "Really, Tasha? You're going to embarrass my guest like that?" "Your guest." Natasha's laugh was hollow. "Is that what we're calling them now? What would you like me to call them? My stress relief? My necessary distraction?" He shrugged, reaching for his robe. "Face it, sweetheart. You're good at playing the politician's wife, but you're boring in every other department. A man has needs." There was a time when those words would have shattered her, would have made her question everything about herself, her appearance, her worth, her very existence. But tonight, they just bounced off the armor she hadn't realized she'd been building. "I want a divorce," she said simply. Julian's expression darkened. "No, that wasn't a request, and I'm not giving you one." He stood, tying his robe with deliberate slowness. "In case you've forgotten, I'm running for state senate next year. I need a wife, a stable, respectable marriage. Divorce would destroy my political career before it even starts." "Then you should have thought about that before sleeping with half of Detroit." "Detroit, Chicago, New York." He waved his hand dismissively. "Geography is irrelevant. What's relevant is that you're my wife, and you're going to stay my wife. Or have you forgotten about your parents?" And there it was, the chain that kept her bound tighter than any wedding vow. Natasha's parents lived in a modest home in Flint, Michigan. Her father had been injured in a factory accident 3 years ago and couldn't work. Her mother's arthritis made it nearly impossible for her to hold down a job. They survived on disability checks that barely covered their medication, let alone food and bills. Julian sent them $3,000 every month. It was the only thing keeping them housed and fed. "That's what I thought," Julian said, reading her silence correctly. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop with this divorce nonsense. You're going to smile at campaign events. You're going to play the devoted wife. And in return, your parents continue to eat and keep their lights on. We all get what we need." "And what do I get?" Natasha's voice cracked despite her best efforts. "Besides the honor of being humiliated weekly, you get financial security, a beautiful home. A husband who doesn't ask questions about how you spend your days?" His smile was cruel. "Hell, if you want, I'll set you up with someone too. Open marriage, modern arrangement, everyone wins." The grocery bag slipped from her fingers, hitting the floor with a dull thud. An open marriage. He was actually suggesting an open marriage. "You're disgusting," she whispered. "I'm realistic." Julian moved past her toward the bathroom. "Sleep in the guest room tonight. I need to change the sheets. And Tasha, next time, knock before entering our bedroom. It's just good manners." He closed the bathroom door, and Natasha heard the shower turn on. Just like that, He was washing away his latest betrayal, preparing to do it all over again. Natasha stood in that bedroom, their bedroom, though it had never really felt like theirs, and felt something crack wide open inside her chest. Not her heart. That had broken so many times there was nothing left to break. No, this was something else. Something deeper. Her spirit, her sense of self. The part of her that had once believed in love and faithfulness and happy endings. She walked to the guest bedroom on autopilot, her mind spinning. Divorce wasn't an option. Julian would cut off her parents immediately, and they'd be homeless within months. But staying meant accepting this life forever. Meant watching her husband parade his infidelities in front of her. Meant becoming a hollow shell of a woman, a prop in Julian's political theater. There had to be another way. Natasha pulled out her laptop, her fingers trembling slightly as she opened a job search website. She had a bachelor's degree in communications, but she'd quit her marketing job when she married Julian. He'd insisted she didn't need to work, that his salary as a corporate lawyer was more than enough for both of them. Now she understood why. Keeping her financially dependent meant keeping her trapped. The job listing swam before her eyes. Marketing director requires 5 years recent experience. Social media manager requires portfolio of current work. Executive assistant requires references. She had none of those things. 4 years of being a housewife had erased her professional credentials. Natasha scrolled down, past the jobs she was qualified for but couldn't prove, past the positions that required experience she no longer had. Her mouse hovered over one listing near the bottom of the page. Housekeeper needed. Live-out position. Flexible hours, excellent pay. Large private residence in Bloomfield Hills. Experience preferred but not required. Must be detail-oriented, trustworthy, and discreet. Apply online. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't what she'd dreamed of when she'd walked across that graduation stage 6 years ago. But it was something. A start. A way to build her own financial independence so that one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday, she could walk away from Julian and still take care of her parents. Before she could overthink it, Natasha filled out the application. Name, address, work history, sparse as it was. References. She listed her college professors, hoping they'd remember her. In the additional comments section, she typed, "I'm a hard worker, fast learner, and desperately need this opportunity. I promise you won't regret hiring me." She hit submit and closed the laptop. From the master bedroom, she heard Julian's phone ring, heard his flirtatious laugh as he answered. Already lining up tomorrow's entertainment, no doubt. Natasha lay back on the guest bed and stared at the ceiling. She didn't cry. She'd cried an ocean of tears over Julian's betrayals, and all it had earned her was puffy eyes and a sore throat. No. Tonight she made herself a promise. No more tears, no more begging. No more playing the victim in her own life story. Starting tomorrow, she was going to fight back. Not with rage or confrontation. Julian was too powerful, too cruel for that. But quietly, strategically, one small step at a time. She would get that job. She would save every penny. She would build an escape route even if it took years. And one day, Julian Smithfield would learn that the woman he'd underestimated, humiliated, and trapped was so much stronger than he'd ever imagined. If you're already rooting for Natasha, hit that subscribe button. This woman is about to meet someone who'll change everything. Drop a comment. Have you ever felt trapped in a situation? You're not alone. Keep watching because this story is about to get intense. The response came faster than Natasha expected. She was in the kitchen the next morning, making coffee she didn't want and toast she wouldn't eat, when her phone dinged. Julian had already left for his Saturday golf game, or whatever he was really doing, so she was alone in their enormous empty house. The email subject line read, "Interview request. Housekeeper position." Natasha's hands shook as she opened it. "Dear Mrs. Monroe, thank you for your application. We were impressed by your background and would like to schedule an in-person interview. Would tomorrow, Sunday, at 2 p.m. work for your schedule? Please reply to confirm. Best regards, Margaret Chen, Estate Manager, Ironwood Estate, tomorrow." They wanted to interview her tomorrow. Natasha typed back a confirmation so quickly she nearly sent it with typos. Then she sat at her kitchen island, staring at her phone, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Hope? Sunday afternoon found Natasha driving through the winding roads of Bloomfield Hills, Michigan's wealthiest suburb. The houses here weren't just homes. They were monuments to success, each one more impressive than the last. But Ironwood Estate made them all look like modest cottages. The property was surrounded by a 12-foot stone wall with security cameras at regular intervals. The gate was solid iron with an intercom system that looked like it belonged at a government facility. Natasha pressed the button with a trembling finger. "Yes?" A woman's crisp voice answered. Natasha Monroe. I have a 2 p.m. interview for the housekeeper position." The gate swung open silently, revealing a driveway that curved through manicured grounds that could have been featured in a magazine. Ancient oak trees lined the path. A small pond reflected the afternoon sun. And at the end of the drive sat the house. Mansion didn't do it justice. It was a sprawling stone structure that looked like it had been transplanted from an English countryside. All elegant lines and mullioned windows, with ivy climbing up one side and a fountain in the circular driveway. Natasha parked her modest sedan next to a Range Rover and a Mercedes, feeling suddenly conscious of her car's age and her outfit's simplicity. She'd chosen a conservative black dress and flats, professional but not showy. Now she wondered if she should have worn something else. The front door opened before she could knock. A woman in her 50s stood there, elegant in a gray pantsuit, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Mrs. Monroe, I'm Margaret Chen. Please, come in." The interior was somehow even more impressive than the exterior. The foyer alone was the size of Natasha's entire guest bedroom, with marble floors, a sweeping staircase, and a chandelier that probably cost more than her car. "The owner is away on business," Margaret explained as she led Natasha through a series of immaculate rooms. "But he left instructions for me to conduct the initial interview. If you're selected, you'll meet him next week." They ended up in a sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a garden that looked like it required a full-time staff to maintain. "Tell me about yourself, Mrs. Monroe," Margaret said, pulling out a notebook. Natasha had prepared for this, but now, sitting in this beautiful room, the rehearsed answers felt hollow. So instead, she told the truth. "I'm in a difficult marriage," she said quietly. "My husband, he's not a kind man. I need financial independence so that one day I can take care of my parents and myself without relying on someone who uses that dependency as a weapon. I know I don't have recent work experience, but I'm detail-oriented, I learn quickly, and I promise you no one will work harder than me." Margaret's expression softened. "That's honest. I appreciate honesty." She made a note. This position would be Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day. The estate is large, 12 bedrooms, 15 bathrooms, library, gym, pool house. It's a lot to maintain. "I can handle it," Natasha said immediately. "The pay is $35 an hour, paid weekly. The owner values privacy and discretion above everything else. What you see and hear in this house stays in this house. Can you commit to that?" $35 an hour. Natasha did the quick math. At 40 hours a week, that was $1,400 weekly. Almost $6,000 a month. Enough to match what Julian gave her parents, with money left over for her own savings. "Absolutely," Natasha breathed. "I can start whenever you need me." Margaret smiled. "The owner is returning from deployment. He's military, on Tuesday. Can you start Wednesday?" "Deployment?" Natasha's eyes widened. "He's a soldier?" "Major Deshaun Carter, actually. He's been in the Army for 15 years. Just returned from his 4th tour overseas." Margaret's voice held unmistakable pride. "He's a good man, stern but fair. He keeps to himself mostly, which is why we need someone to help maintain the estate. His previous housekeeper retired last month." A soldier. Somehow that made Natasha feel safer about the job. Soldiers had honor, didn't they? Discipline, integrity, everything Julian lacked. "I'd be honored to work for him," Natasha said honestly. Margaret stood, extending her hand. "Then welcome to Ironwood Estate, Mrs. Monroe. I'll email you the full job details tonight. See you Wednesday at 8 a.m. sharp." Natasha floated back to her car, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She had a job. A real job with real pay that didn't depend on Julian's whims or cruelty. It was only when she was halfway home that she realized she'd just accepted a position working for a man she'd never met, in a house that felt more like a palace than a workplace. But something told her, some instinct she'd learned to trust after years of surviving Julian, that this was exactly where she needed to be. Wednesday morning, Natasha woke at 5 a.m., too nervous and excited to sleep. She dressed carefully in comfortable jeans and a simple blue t-shirt. Margaret had said the dress code was casual but neat, and left the house before Julian woke up. She'd told him she'd joined a book club that met 3 mornings a week. He'd barely looked up from his phone. "Fine, just be home to make dinner," he'd said, already texting someone, probably the redhead, or maybe a new conquest. Natasha didn't care anymore. Let him have his affairs. She had something better now. She had purpose. Ironwood Estate looked different in the morning light. Softer somehow, more welcoming. Margaret met her at the door with a uniform. Simple black pants and a gray polo shirt with the estate's logo, a detailed list of daily tasks, and a warm smile. "Don't be overwhelmed," Margaret said as Natasha stared at the 4-page task list. "You'll get into a rhythm. Today, I'll show you around and help you get started. Tomorrow, you'll be on your own. But I'm always available if you need guidance." The house was even more massive than Natasha had realized. The main floor alone took 2 hours to tour. Living room, dining room, kitchen, which was bigger than her entire first apartment. Library, office, gym, theater room, and a sunroom that overlooked an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Major Carter uses the gym religiously, Margaret explained. Military discipline. He's usually up by 4:30 a.m. for his workout. You won't see him much. He keeps to himself, works from home in his office, and travels frequently. Is he married? Natasha asked, then immediately felt her face heat. I mean, for household purposes. Like, am I cleaning for one person or… Margaret's smile was knowing. He's single, divorced about 3 years ago, no children. His ex-wife couldn't handle the military lifestyle, the deployments, the moving, the uncertainty. They climbed the grand staircase to the 2nd floor. Bedroom after bedroom, each one decorated in tasteful neutrals, each one looking barely used. Guest rooms, Margaret said. Major Carter's suite is on the 3rd floor. That's his private space. You'll clean it once a week, and only when he's not home. He's very particular about his privacy. The 3rd floor was accessed by a smaller private staircase. When they reached the top, Natasha understood why. This wasn't just a bedroom suite. It was a personal sanctuary. The master bedroom was enormous, but somehow cozy, decorated in deep blues and grays. A king-sized bed dominated one wall, military crisp with hospital corners. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the estate's grounds. A sitting area with leather chairs and a fireplace occupied one corner. But what caught Natasha's attention was the wall of photographs. Dozens of them, all in identical black frames. Deshaun Carter, she assumed, in various military uniforms, in different locations around the world. Some were formal portraits, others were candid shots. Him with other soldiers, all of them dusty and tired but smiling. A few showed him receiving medals, shaking hands with high-ranking officials. In every photo, his expression was the same, intense, focused, unsmiling. Even in the casual shots, there was something coiled about him, like a spring wound too tight. He's seen a lot, Margaret said quietly, noticing Natasha's attention. More than most people will ever understand. Be patient with him if he seems distant or stern. It's not personal. Natasha nodded, studying one particular photograph. It showed Deshaun in full combat gear, standing in what looked like a Middle Eastern desert. His face was partially shadowed by his helmet, but his eyes, even in the photo, even across the distance, were arresting. Dark, penetrating, ancient with experience. She felt something stir in her chest. Not attraction. She was too broken for that, even though the man's gorgeousness couldn't be denied. But something else. Curiosity, maybe. Recognition of someone else who'd been through battles, even if hers had been fought in a different kind of war zone. Come on, Margaret said. Let's get you started on the main floor. That's where you'll spend most of your time. The next few days fell into a rhythm. Natasha arrived at 8 a.m., changed into her uniform, and worked systematically through her task list. Dusting, vacuuming, polishing floors, cleaning windows, organizing. The work was physical and exhausting, but she loved it. Loved seeing the immediate results of her effort. Loved the quiet solitude of the enormous house. Loved knowing that every hour she worked was one step closer to freedom. Major Carter was due back on Friday, but Natasha didn't see him that day. She noticed signs of his presence. Coffee grounds in the trash, a gym towel left on the counter, boots by the back door. But the man himself remained invisible. He's probably jet-lagged, Margaret explained when Natasha mentioned it. Give him a few days to adjust. He's not the most social person under the best circumstances. Monday of her second week, Natasha was in the library, dusting the floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and nearly fell off her stepladder. The man standing in the doorway was... There were no adequate words. Tall, at least 6'4", with shoulders that seemed to span the doorframe. His dark skin was smooth and unblemished. His head was shaved close, military style, emphasizing the sharp angles of his face. He wore black tactical pants and a gray t-shirt that did nothing to hide the ridiculous definition of his chest and arms. But it was his eyes that nearly stopped Natasha's heart. Dark brown, almost black, with an intensity that felt like being X-rayed. They swept over her, taking in everything. Her position on the ladder, the dust cloth in her hand, probably her elevated heart rate and dilated pupils. "You must be the new housekeeper," he said. His voice was deep, rough around the edges, like gravel wrapped in velvet. Yes, sir. Natasha Monroe." She climbed down from the ladder on shaky legs, absurdly conscious of how small she felt next to him. She was 5'6", not short by any means, but he made her feel tiny. "It's nice to meet you, Major Carter." "Deshawn," he corrected. "I'm retired from active duty. No need for the rank." "Deshawn, then." His name felt strange on her tongue. Intimate, somehow. They stood there for a moment, the library quiet except for the ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. His eyes hadn't left her face, and Natasha fought the urge to fidget. "Margaret speaks highly of you," he finally said. "Says you're thorough and professional." "I try to be." "She also said you have a difficult home situation." His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Understanding, maybe. "I respect privacy, Mrs. Pai Monroe. What you deal with outside these walls is your business. But if you ever need resources, help, let Margaret know." The unexpected kindness made Natasha's throat tight. Thank you. Thank you." He nodded once, turned to leave, then paused. "The library looks good. Best it's looked in months." Then he was gone, his footsteps fading down the hallway, leaving Natasha standing there with her heart racing and her hands trembling for reasons she couldn't quite name. Up close, the pictures didn't do him any justice. When last had she seen someone that... She shook her head firmly. Mind out the gutter, Tasha. This was her employer. Nothing more. She was a married woman. Unhappily married, trapped in a nightmare, but still married. And he was... God, he was exactly the kind of man Julian pretended to be. Strong, honorable, competent. The kind of man who said what he meant and meant what he said. The kind of man she'd given up believing actually existed. Natasha forced herself to climb back up the ladder and return to her dusting. But for the rest of the day, she couldn't shake the memory of those dark eyes studying her face, or the quiet offer of help that had sounded more like a promise. If you're already feeling the tension, you're not alone. Hit that like button and drop a comment. Team Deshawn or nah? Subscribe because things are about to get hotter. Keep watching. Over the next 2 weeks, Natasha settled into a comfortable routine at Ironwood Estate. She'd arrive at 8 a.m., change into her uniform, and work her way through the task list with methodical efficiency. The house was so large that she never ran out of things to do. There was always another room to clean, another window to polish, another floor to mop. And slowly, carefully, she was building her escape fund. Julian still gave her parents their monthly allowance, $3,000 that kept them housed and fed. But now Natasha was earning $5,600 a month, and Julian didn't know about a single penny of it. She'd opened a separate bank account at a different bank, one where Julian had no access, no visibility, no control. Every week when she deposited her pay, she felt a little bit freer. At home, things with Julian had somehow gotten worse and better simultaneously. Worse because he'd stopped even pretending to hide his affairs. He'd bring women to the house while Natasha was supposedly at her book club, leaving evidence of his betrayals scattered around like breadcrumbs. Better because she simply stopped caring. Let him have his parade of women. She was done being hurt by it. "You seem different lately," Julian commented one evening over dinner. A rare occasion where they actually ate together. "Happier. It's unsettling." Natasha smiled blandly. "Maybe I'm just accepting our modern arrangement, like you suggested. His eyes narrowed with suspicion, but he couldn't quite figure out what had changed. Good. Let him wonder. At Ironwood Estate, Natasha's interactions with Deshawn were brief but increasingly charged. She'd be cleaning the kitchen and he'd walk through for coffee, their eyes meeting for a moment too long. She'd be vacuuming the hallway and he'd pass by on his way to his office, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something clean and masculine that made her stomach flip. They rarely spoke beyond pleasantries. But there was something in the air between them, something electric and unspoken that made Natasha's heart race every time he was near. She told herself it was just physical attraction. Natural, harmless. She was a woman starved for basic kindness and respect, and he was an objectively attractive man who treated her like a human being. Of course her body would respond. It didn't mean anything. But then came the Tuesday that changed everything. Natasha was in the gym, cleaning the mirrors and equipment, when she heard sounds from the adjacent room, Deshawn's office. At first, she didn't think anything of it. He worked from home most days, handling whatever mysterious business retired military officers handled. But then she heard something that made her freeze. A sharp intake of breath. A muffled curse. And then silence. The kind of silence that felt wrong. Natasha set down her cleaning supplies and moved toward the office door, which was slightly ajar. Deshawn, are you okay? No answer. She pushed the door open and found him sitting at his desk, his face gray, his left hand clutching his right shoulder. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Deshawn! She rushed forward. What's wrong? Should I call an ambulance? No. The word came out tight, controlled. Old injury. Acts up sometimes. I just need... He tried to reach for something in his desk drawer and winced, his whole body going rigid with pain. Let me, Natasha said immediately. What do you need? Medication, bottom right drawer, blue bottle. She found it quickly, prescription pain medication with instructions to take as needed. She shook out 2 pills and grabbed the water bottle on his desk. Here. She placed the pills in his palm, steadied the water bottle as he swallowed. His hand was shaking. This man who seemed completely unbreakable was trembling with pain. What can I do? Natasha asked. How can I help? Just talk to me. Distract me while these kick in. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. Tell me something. Anything. So she did. She started talking about the first thing that came to mind. Her childhood in Flint, growing up in a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone, where her mother used to make the best sweet potato pie every Thanksgiving. She told him about her father, who used to take her fishing every Sunday, who taught her that hard work and integrity mattered more than money. She talked until his breathing evened out, until the tension left his shoulders, until he opened his eyes and looked at her with something that made her breath catch. Thank you, he said quietly. That helped. What happened? To your shoulder, I mean, if you don't mind me asking. IED, improvised explosive device, 3rd tour in Afghanistan. He rolled his shoulder carefully, testing it. Took out my Humvee, killed my driver. I was lucky, just shrapnel and a dislocated shoulder. But sometimes, when the weather changes or I overdo it at the gym, it reminds me. Natasha sank into the chair across from his desk. I'm sorry. That must have been terrifying. It was a long time ago, but his eyes said it felt like yesterday. You get used to it, the pain, the memories. You learn to function anyway. Do you? Natasha heard herself ask. Get used to it? Because I've been trying to get used to my pain for 4 years, and it never seems to get easier. The words hung between them, too honest, too raw. She'd revealed more than she meant to. Deshawn leaned forward, his elbows on his desk, his eyes locked on hers. What does he do to you, Natasha? The question was quiet, but there was steel underneath it. The voice of a man who'd commanded soldiers, who'd faced down enemies, who didn't accept half-truths or evasions. He doesn't hit me, she said quickly, then wondered why that was always her first defense. As if emotional abuse didn't count as long as there were no bruises. He cheats. Constantly. Sometimes 3 or 4 women a week. He brings them to our house. He doesn't hide it anymore. Deshawn's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping in his cheek. And you can't leave because... My parents. He sends them money every month. They're poor, they're sick, and they depend on that money. If I leave, he'll cut them off. He's made that very clear. Natasha's laugh was bitter. He wants to run for state senate, needs the image of a stable marriage. So I'm trapped playing the devoted wife while he does whatever he wants. That's financial abuse, Deshawn said flatly. Using money to control you, to trap you. That's abuse, Natasha. Hearing someone else say it out loud, validating what she'd been feeling but couldn't quite name, made something crack inside her chest. I know, she whispered. But I don't know how to escape without destroying my parents' lives. That's why you're here, building your own income. She nodded. I'm saving every penny. Once I have enough to cover their expenses myself, I can leave. It'll take time, maybe a year or more, but what if there was another way? Deshawn interrupted. What if someone else could cover your parents' expenses while you leave now? Natasha's heart stuttered. I can't ask you to do that. You're my employer, not my... I'm someone who understands what it's like to be trapped, he cut her off. Someone who has more money than I know what to do with and no one to spend it on. Someone who believes no one should have to stay in a situation that's killing their spirit. Deshawn, think about it. He stood, testing his shoulder. The pain medication had clearly kicked in. I'm not offering out of pity. I'm offering because it's the right thing to do, and because... He stopped, his dark eyes intense on her face. Because you deserve better than what he's giving you. The air between them felt charged, dangerous. Natasha stood too, suddenly very aware that they were alone in this office, that he was close enough to touch, that she wanted. No, she was married. Unhappily, miserably married, but still married. And Deshawn was her employer. This couldn't happen. I should get back to work, she said, her voice not quite steady. Natasha. He said her name like a prayer and a warning all at once. If you ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call me, day or night, understand? She nodded, not trusting her voice, and fled the office. But his words echoed in her head for the rest of the day. And that night when Julian came home reeking of someone else's perfume, Natasha didn't cry. Instead, she lay in the guest room and thought about dark eyes and quiet offers of help and what it might feel like to be truly free. The following week, Julian announced he had a campaign event. Big donors, he said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. Important people. I need you there, looking perfect, playing the devoted wife. Natasha wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him to take one of his mistresses instead. But she pasted on a smile and said, What time should I be ready? 6 p.m. Wear the blue dress, the one that makes you look respectable. The blue dress. The one she'd worn to their wedding rehearsal dinner. The one that reminded her of hope and promises and all the lies she'd believed. She wore it anyway because fighting Julian on small things wasn't worth the energy she needed to save for the big battles. The event was at an upscale hotel in downtown Detroit, all polished marble and crystal chandeliers and people who measured their worth in zeros. Natasha smiled until her face hurt, shook hands with strangers, let Julian introduce her as my beautiful wife, while his hand on her lower back felt more like a brand of ownership than affection. She was counting down the minutes until she could leave when she saw him. Deshawn Carter, dressed in a sharp black suit that probably cost more than her car, standing across the room talking to a group of men in military dress uniforms. He looked different in formal wear, less like a soldier and more like a warrior in disguise. Dangerous. Powerful. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and something electric passed between them. Julian noticed the direction of her gaze. That's Major Carter, decorated war hero, worth a fortune. I should introduce myself. Military vote is crucial. Before Natasha could protest, Julian was dragging her across the room, his politician's smile fixed firmly in place. Major Carter? Julian extended his hand. Julian Monroe. I'm running for state senate. I wanted to introduce myself and thank you for your service to our country. Deshawn's expression was polite but cool as he shook Julian's hand. Mr. Monroe? And this is my wife, Natasha. Julian pulled her forward, his hand tight on her waist. Possessive. We've met, Deshawn said, his dark eyes meeting Natasha's. Mrs. Smithfield works for me. Julian's smile froze. Excuse me? I hired her as my housekeeper 2 weeks ago. She's excellent at her job. The silence that followed could have choked an elephant. Natasha watched Julian's face cycle through several emotions: confusion, anger, humiliation, before settling on a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. Is that so? Julian's voice was dangerously soft. Funny, Natasha never mentioned she'd gotten a job. Didn't I mention it? Natasha kept her voice light, though her heart was hammering. I joined a book club. Well, it's more of a cleaning book club. We clean and discuss books. It was a terrible lie, and Julian's eyes promised retribution later. But before he could respond, Deshaun spoke again. Actually, I need to apologize, Mrs. Monroe. His voice was smooth, but there was steel underneath. I shouldn't have mentioned your employment so casually. I know some people consider domestic work beneath them, but I've always believed honest work is honorable work, regardless of the title. The dig was subtle but unmistakable. Julian's jaw tightened. Of course, Julian said through clenched teeth. Though I'm curious why my wife felt the need to seek employment at all. I provide more than adequately for her. Sometimes people work for reasons that have nothing to do with money, Deshaun replied, his gaze never leaving Julian's face. Purpose, independence, self-respect, things that can't be provided by someone else. The tension between the two men was thick enough to cut with a knife. Natasha felt like she was watching two predators size each other up, deciding whether to fight or back down. Well, Julian said, his smile sharp as broken glass, I'm sure we can discuss this at home. Natasha, we should mingle. Major Carter, it was enlightening to meet you. He practically dragged Natasha away, his fingers digging into her arm hard enough to bruise. They made it to a quiet corner before he rounded on her, his face twisted with barely controlled rage. A housekeeper? He hissed. You're working as someone's maid? Do you have any idea how that makes me look? Like someone whose wife doesn't sit around waiting for him to finish cheating? Natasha shot back, too angry to care about consequences. I needed something to do with my time, Julian. Would you prefer I sit at home counting your infidelities? I prefer you remember your place. His grip tightened. You're my wife. That means you represent me. And you will not embarrass me by scrubbing toilets for some military grunt. He's not a grunt. He's a decorated major who... I don't care if he's the president. Julian's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. You quit that job tomorrow, or I cut off your parents' money. Your choice. The threat landed like a physical blow. Natasha felt her newfound freedom slipping through her fingers like sand. You can't... Watch me. Julian released her arm, smoothing his tie. Now smile and pretend we're having a lovely evening. We have donors to impress. He walked away, leaving Natasha standing there with tears burning behind her eyes. Not tears of sadness. She was done with those. These were tears of pure, impotent rage. She'd been so close to building something of her own, to creating a path out of this nightmare. And Julian had destroyed it with one casual threat, just like he destroyed everything she tried to build. Mrs. Monroe? She turned to find Deshaun standing behind her, his expression dark with concern. Are you all right? I saw him grab you. I'm fine. The lie tasted bitter. You're not fine. He moved closer, his voice low. And I'm sorry. I shouldn't have mentioned your job. I wanted to see his reaction, wanted to understand what kind of man treats his wife the way he treats you. But I didn't think about the consequences for you. He wants me to quit, Natasha said flatly. Tomorrow. Or he cuts off my parents. Deshaun's jaw clenched so hard she heard his teeth grind. Then we'll find another way. There is no other way, don't you understand? He controls everything. The money, my parents' well-being, my entire life. I'm trapped, and every time I try to find an exit, he blocks it. Natasha, I need some air. She pushed past him, heading for the hotel's outdoor terrace. She needed to breathe, needed to think, needed to figure out how she'd gone from hopeful to hopeless in the span of 5 minutes. The terrace was blessedly empty, the November air cold enough to shock her system. She gripped the railing and stared out at Detroit's skyline, trying to remember how to exist without screaming. Footsteps behind her. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. She could feel Deshaun's presence like a force of nature. You should go back inside, she said quietly. Julian's probably watching. If he sees us together, it'll make things worse. Let him watch. Deshaun came to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. I'm not afraid of your husband, Natasha. You should be. He's vindictive and cruel, and he'll find a way to hurt anyone who gets in his way. I've faced down Taliban fighters and survived IED explosions. I'm not particularly concerned about a lawyer with delusions of political grandeur. Despite everything, Natasha almost smiled. You don't know him. I know his type. Deshaun turned to face her fully. Men who use money and power to control people weaker than them. Bullies in expensive suits. I've dealt with plenty of them. And how do you deal with them? By refusing to be intimidated. His dark eyes held hers. By standing up to them. By showing them that some people can't be bought or threatened or broken. That's easy to say when you have power, Natasha said. When you're strong and independent and don't have people depending on you. Then let me help you become strong and independent. Deshaun's voice was intense, urgent. Keep the job. I'll cover your parents' expenses starting tomorrow. You build your savings, establish your independence, and when you're ready to leave, you'll have everything you need. Why? The question burst out of her. Why would you do this for me? You barely know me. Because I know what it's like to feel trapped, he said quietly. I know what it's like to be in a situation where every choice is impossible, where you're just trying to survive one more day. I spent 3 tours in combat zones feeling exactly like that. And when I finally got out, I swore I'd never let myself be trapped again. More than that, I swore I'd help others escape their traps if I could. Natasha stared at him. This man who'd appeared in her life like an answer to prayers she'd been too broken to pray. This isn't charity? This is one human being helping another. He hesitated, then added, and maybe it's also a man who's incredibly attracted to a woman he has no right to be attracted to, trying to help her gain the freedom to make her own choices. The confession hung between them like a live wire. Deshaun. Natasha's voice was barely a whisper. I'm married. To a man who doesn't deserve you, who treats you like property instead of a person. He stepped closer, and she could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating off his body. But I'm not asking for anything, Natasha. I'm not trying to start something while you're still trapped. I'm trying to help you get free. What happens after that, if anything, is entirely up to you. Natasha's heart was racing so fast she felt dizzy. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was dangerous, that accepting his help would complicate everything, that she barely knew this man despite working in his house for 2 weeks. But the part of her that had been drowning for 4 years, gasping for air, reaching for any lifeline, that part was screaming yes. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay, I'll keep the job, and I'll accept your help with my parents. But Deshaun, I need you to understand something. I'm not ready for anything beyond employer and employee. Not while I'm still married, not while everything is so complicated. I understand. His smile was gentle, understanding. I'm a patient man, Natasha. I've waded through 4 deployments, survived situations that would break most people, and learned that some things are worth waiting for. You take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Y'all, if you're screaming right now, hit that like button. Drop a comment. Is Deshaun too good to be true, or is this real? Subscribe because Julian is about to lose his mind. Keep watching. The confrontation with Julian came the moment they got home. He waited until they were inside, door closed, before he turned on her with a fury she'd rarely seen. You deliberately humiliated me tonight, he snarled. Working as a maid for some military nobody, making me look like I can't provide for my own wife. I didn't humiliate you. You're perfectly capable of doing that yourself with your parade of mistresses. The slap came so fast she didn't see it coming. Her head snapped to the side, her cheek exploding in pain. For a moment, they both froze. Julian had never hit her before. Never. 4 years of emotional abuse, financial control, infidelity, but never physical violence. Until now. Natasha. He reached for her, his expression shocked, almost scared. I didn't mean... She stepped back, her hand on her burning cheek, and something inside her finally irrevocably broke. Not broke down, broke open. Like a door she'd been pushing against for years had finally given way. You just hit me, she said, her voice eerily calm. You pushed me. You've been acting strange for weeks, defying me, questioning me. I've been remembering who I was before you made me forget. Natasha walked to the guest bedroom. Her bedroom now, she realized. She'd been sleeping there for weeks. I'm done, Julian. I'm done pretending this marriage is anything but a prison sentence. You don't get to be done. He followed her, his face red. I decide when this marriage ends, not you. And I'm telling you right now, you quit that job tomorrow or what? You'll hit me again? You'll cut off my parents? She laughed, high and sharp. Do it. Do whatever you want. I'm not quitting. Then your parents can starve. No, they won't. Natasha's smile was cold. Because someone else is going to help them. Someone who actually understands what it means to be honorable. What it means to help people without using it as a weapon. Understanding dawned on Julian's face, followed by rage. Carter, you're letting him pay for your parents? Are you sleeping with him? Is that what this is about? I haven't touched him, haven't even thought about it. The lie came easily. She definitely thought about it. But even if I had, what right would you have to be angry? You've been sleeping with half of Michigan for 4 years. That's different? Because you're a man? Because you're important? Natasha stepped closer, her fear evaporating in the heat of her anger. No, Julian. The only difference is that I actually have standards. I actually believe in honoring my vows. But you've broken those vows so many times they're nothing but dust. So don't you dare stand there and accuse me of anything. Julian's hands clenched into fists, and for a moment, Natasha thought he might hit her again. Part of her almost wanted him to. It would make the next part easier. But he didn't. Instead, he said, "You're not leaving me. I'll destroy you. I'll make sure you never work again, never see your parents again. I'll drag your name through so much mud you'll wish you'd never been born." You can try. Natasha's voice was steel. But I'm not the same woman you married, Julian. I'm not the naive girl who believed your promises. I'm someone who's learned to survive. And I'm telling you now, I'm leaving. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And when I do, there's nothing you can do to stop me. She closed the bedroom door in his face and locked it. For a long moment, she stood there, shaking, her cheek still throbbing from his slap. Then she pulled out her phone and did something she'd never done before. She texted Deshaun. "He hit me." The response came within seconds. "Are you safe right now?" "Door's locked. He won't try again tonight. He's too worried about his image." "Take a picture of your face. Document everything. Do you want me to come get you?" Natasha considered it. Considered running to Deshaun's house, to safety, to a man who'd offered her protection without asking for anything in return. But she wasn't ready yet. She needed to do this right, needed to build her case, needed to leave legally and permanently so Julian could never drag her back. Not yet, but thank you. For everything. I meant what I said. Day or night, Natasha. You call me, and I'm there. She took the picture of her reddening cheek, saved it to a hidden folder on her phone, and sat on the edge of the bed. Tomorrow she'd research divorce lawyers who specialized in domestic abuse. She'd document every affair, every threat, every controlling behavior. She'd build her case brick by brick until she had a fortress Julian couldn't penetrate. And through it all, she'd keep working at Ironwood Estate, keep building her savings, keep getting stronger. Because Julian was right about one thing. She was different now. She'd found something she'd lost years ago. She'd found herself. The next morning, Natasha arrived at Ironwood Estate with her cheek carefully covered in makeup. Margaret took one look at her and frowned. "Honey, are you all right?" "I'm fine." The automatic lie. "Natasha." Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. "I've been working for the Major for 5 years. I know what fine looks like, and this isn't it." Before Natasha could respond, Deshaun appeared in the hallway. He must have been waiting for her. His eyes went straight to her face, and even through the makeup she saw him clock the bruise. His expression went absolutely cold. "Margaret," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "Could you give us a moment?" Margaret nodded and disappeared, and suddenly Natasha was alone with Deshaun in the foyer, his dark eyes burning with barely controlled rage. "Let me see," he said quietly. "It's nothing, I covered it. Let me see, Natasha. His voice was gentle, but it was also the voice of a man who'd commanded soldiers in combat zones, a voice that expected to be obeyed. Natasha walked to the powder room, Deshawn following. In the bright light, she carefully wiped off the makeup, revealing the purple bruise that spread across her left cheekbone. Deshawn's jaw worked. Did he do anything else? No, just the slap. I think he shocked himself. He'd never been physical before. Deshawn's hands were clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. You're talking like there's going to be an after. There's not. You're not going back to that house. I have to. No. He turned to face her fully. You don't. You're staying here. I have 12 bedrooms. You can have your pick. I'll have Margaret prepare a room, and you're not leaving this property until we've figured out a way to keep you safe. Deshawn, I can't just move in with you. Julian will use that in divorce proceedings. He'll say I abandoned him, that I was having an affair. Then we'll document everything. Every bruise, every threat, every woman he's slept with. Deshawn's voice was fierce. I have resources, Natasha. Money, lawyers, connections. We'll build a case so airtight he won't have a choice but to let you go quietly. Why are you doing this? The question came out as a whisper. You barely know me. Why do you care so much? Deshawn was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw with honesty. Because the first time I saw you standing in my library on that ladder, you looked like you were carrying the weight of the world. And something in me recognized something in you. Two people who'd been through their own wars, trying to figure out how to survive the aftermath. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his warmth, smell his clean scent. And because every time I see you, every time we talk, every time you smile, which isn't often enough, I feel something I haven't felt in years. Hope, purpose, a reason to be more than just a man going through the motions. His hand came up, gently touching the unbruised side of her face. I'm doing this because I'm falling for you, Natasha. Have been since the moment I learned you took up this job despite your husband's status, to fight for yourself and your loved ones. Even more the day you told me about your father teaching you to fish. And I know the timing is terrible. I know you're married. I know this is complicated. But I can't just stand by and watch him hurt you. I won't. Natasha's breath caught. She should step back, should maintain professional distance, should remember all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, her eyes closing for just a moment as she let herself feel safe. Cherished. Protected. I'm falling for you too, she admitted. And it terrifies me, because I don't trust my judgment anymore. I married Julian thinking he was a good man, and look how that turned out. What if I'm wrong about you too? What if this is just another mistake? Then we'll make it together. Deshawn's thumb stroked her cheek so gently it made her throat tight. But Natasha, I'm not him. I'm not going to lie to you or cheat on you or use your vulnerabilities as weapons. I'm going to stand beside you, support you, and wait as long as it takes for you to be free. And if, when you're finally free, you decide you don't want this, don't want me, I'll respect that. But at least you'll have made that choice without fear or coercion or desperation. It was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to her, and it was happening in a powder room at 8:30 in the morning while she had a black eye. Somehow, that made it perfect. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll stay here, just until we figure out the divorce proceedings, just until I'm safe. Deshawn's smile transformed his face from stern and intimidating to devastatingly handsome. Just until you're safe, he agreed. But they both knew it was more than that. They both knew everything had just changed. Moving out of Julian's house while he was at work felt both liberating and terrifying. Natasha took only what was truly hers: clothes, photos of her parents, the few pieces of jewelry her mother had given her. She left behind everything Julian had bought her, everything that felt tainted by his control. Deshawn insisted on coming with her, along with Camden and 2 other security team members. Just in case he comes home early, Deshawn explained. I'm not taking chances with your safety. Julian didn't come home. But he must have had security cameras because Natasha's phone started ringing before they'd even finished loading her car. Where are you? Julian's voice was ice. What are you doing? I'm leaving, Natasha said simply. I told you I was done. You can't leave. I won't allow it. You don't have a choice. She was surprised by how steady her voice was. I've documented everything, Julian. The affairs, the financial control, the threats, and now the physical abuse. I have photos, timestamps, evidence. If you try to stop me, I'll go public with all of it. See how your political career survives that? The silence on the other end was deadly. Then, you're staying with him, aren't you? With Carter. That's none of your business. It's absolutely my business. You're my wife. On paper only, and not for much longer. Natasha glanced at Deshawn, who was watching her with quiet support. You're going to receive divorce papers next week. I suggest you sign them. Because if you don't, every affair, every woman, every dirty secret you think I don't know about, it all becomes public record. Your choice. She hung up before he could respond and turned off her phone. Her hands were shaking, but she felt lighter than she had in years. She'd just stood up to the man who'd controlled her life for 4 years. She'd drawn a line in the sand and dared him to cross it. You did good, Deshawn said quietly, his hand finding hers. I'm proud of you. Those 4 words, I'm proud of you, almost broke her. Julian had never said anything like that. Had never been proud of her for anything except playing the obedient wife. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You don't repay kindness, Natasha. You pass it forward. They drove back to Ironwood Estate together, Natasha's few belongings in the trunk, and for the first time in 4 years, she felt like she could breathe. Margaret had prepared the guest suite on the 2nd floor, a beautiful room with a 4-poster bed, an ensuite bathroom, and windows that overlooked the garden. It was 3 times the size of the guest room she'd been sleeping in at Julian's house, and 100 times more welcoming. This is too much, Natasha protested when she saw it. Nonsense, Margaret said firmly. You're a guest in this house, and guests deserve comfort. Now the major said you're to rest today, no work, just settle in and recover. But Natasha couldn't rest. She was too wired, too anxious, too afraid that Julian would somehow find a way to drag her back. She ended up in the library, the room where she'd first really talked to Deshawn. He found her there an hour later, curled up in one of the leather chairs, staring at her phone. Turned it back on? He asked. 37 missed calls, 53 text messages, all from Julian. She showed him the screen. Most of them threatening, a few of them begging. One particularly creative one promising to have me arrested for adultery. Michigan doesn't have adultery laws, Deshawn said, settling into the chair across from her. And even if it did, you haven't committed adultery. Yet, Natasha heard herself say, then immediately wanted to take it back. I didn't mean... Natasha. Deshawn's voice was gentle. You're going through a divorce. You're traumatized and scared and trying to find solid ground. I'm not going to push you into anything. I meant what I said. I'll wait as long as it takes. What if the waiting changes how you feel? What if you wake up one day and realize I'm not worth the trouble? Not possible. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his eyes intense on hers. Want to know what I did while you were packing? I called my lawyer. She's one of the best divorce attorneys in Michigan. She's agreed to take your case pro bono as a favor to me. We're meeting with her tomorrow. Natasha's throat went tight. Deshawn. And I've already transferred the first month's expenses to your parents' account. $3,000 just like Julian was sending. They'll never know the difference. Stop, Natasha whispered, tears burning her eyes. Stop being so perfect. It's not fair. I'm not perfect. Deshawn's laugh was bitter. I'm a man with PTSD who has nightmares about watching his friends die. I'm someone who spent 15 years learning how to be a soldier and now has no idea how to just be a man. I'm damaged goods, Natasha. But the difference between me and Julian is that I know I'm damaged, and I work every day to be better. He thinks he's perfect, which makes him incapable of change. He stood, walked to her chair, and crouched beside it so they were eye level. You want to know what I see when I look at you? I see a survivor. A warrior who's been fighting a war without any backup, without any support, and somehow you're still standing. That's not weakness, Natasha. That's the strongest thing I've ever witnessed. If you're not crying right now, you should get your heart checked, 'cause it's probably made of stone. Just kidding. Hit that like button if you believe in Natasha and want to see her final battle with Julian in Part 2. Drop a comment with your favorite moment or line so far, or just say Part 2. Subscribe so you don't miss Part 2, because justice is coming.